what I'd like to go over now are some of the tools I'm using. When I build vacuforms, it's very important, since the pieces are so large, is to use a perfectly flat surface. So my portable plastic table here doesn't qualify. So I bought a piece of marble. Initially these are very expensive. They're probably $8 or $10 each at the home improvement store. But it gives you a perfectly flat surface, and it's very easy to clean. If you ever get paint or glue on it, you can scrape it off with a razor blade and it cleans it right up. I've already sanded the tail planes here. This is the vertical stabilizer, and it's going together very, very well so far. But like everything else, I'm going to have to add supporting structure. And in the B-52 there is a very large opening here in the leading edge. I'm gonna guess that it's for cooling electronics, and I need to add that. And in order to add that, I'm gonna have to box up that hole behind it and thin it down with a Dremel tool. But back to the tools here. When you take a piece, one second. When you take a piece of styrene this big and you want to cut a part out, let's cut out this bay. Make sure you can see it. This is the way we get it from your manufacturer, most vacuform kits, and everything is in 80 thousandths plastic. It's quite substantial. Very pleasantly surprised how thick it was. However, you still got to cut it out, and this may draw some people away from vacuforms, but if you want these certain kits that you can't get anywhere else, I mean, this is it. So what you do, usually a two-stage process, but I can do it here in one stage, is you would cut around the part to get it in your hand, but since this is relatively flat, I score the part, and I score a little bit beyond it. If you really want to, you can actually cut completely through, but it's usually faster to score it and snap it. And when you're doing big parts like the fuselage, it can be stressful because you're worried about snapping it in half. So here I just score it twice. If I did it maybe 4 times, I probably would cut the entire piece out. But what you do is then you snap it, and the parts will break clean away. And you get the part out. Now you see this extra flash on the side, and hopefully you can see that. You can see the painted part, the gray part, and then also a little bit of white. Well, that white is obviously the backing piece here. This distorts the part. You need to remove that, and that's where the sandpaper comes in. To do that properly, I've got a little bit of water, and you sand away. And you sand until that white is completely gone. Now I've got a part here I've already sanded. I just take a nice rag and wipe it off. But if you look here, you can see that you don't see any white at all. Yet the entire part is intact. I mean, this almost looks like an injection molded part. Now here's the other one. Now this one has a little detent or bump. I'm going to get it close so you can see it. See that little bump there? If I take a straight edge and put it against the rudder, you should see that there's a little gap there. And I'm going to need to fill that because I don't think it actually exists on the real airplane. Furthermore, the vacuform kits have a whole series of little bumps all over. They're actually quite regular, and I believe that's used to help during the vacuform process of sucking the plastic down to get all the detail. Well, that stuff's got to come off. So I use a sanding stick. You can get these from like drugstores. They're used for sanding your nails and clean up your feet, things like that. I use them quite a bit, and they're not quite waterproof. They break up. But these are about $1 each. They last me about a year. But if you find these little nodules here, like here's one right here, you sand it down, you can see where it showed up as a single dot. Well, you just keep on sanding until the surrounding plastic. Now here you can see that the dot is still there. So you need to keep on sanding. Until the dot is no more. And unfortunately the entire surface is covered in these dots. Here's the main fuselage. So these dots are pretty much absolutely everywhere. Generally though, this is probably the finest vacuform kit I have ever seen. Even back in the vacuform heydays of the 80s and I'd say the early 90s, where vacuforms were a little bit more popular. But you know, if you want the 1/48th kit of a B-52, vacuform is the only way you're going to go. So that's what I've got so far. I'm really enjoying this because you have to add a little bit of engineering into your kits. You have to think ahead. You know, I want nothing more than to glue the aft fuselage together and stick on and cut off the tail and stick on the new tail here. But I can't do that because I would end up with a very squishy fuselage like this. I don't have any support structure for the tail planes, the horizontal or vertical tail planes. I have no structure for the landing gear, and the landing gear are critical because they need a lot of support. There's absolutely nothing to glue them to here. And furthermore, I need to glue the fuselage halves together to make sure this back, the top spine, is perfectly straight, because that's what people are going to see at shows. So I can't do that. I have to glue the fuselage halves together just like any other model, but after I build the interior up, and then I sandwich them together. So you have to think ahead. There's no instructions per se. I mean, Sanger provides some pretty decent instructions about where to put bulkheads and where to put make bulkheads and how to do the landing gear. There's a little bit of interpretation here. These are not to scale. These are 1/72nd scale. I can't imagine what this would cost to get them in 1/48 scale. And unfortunately, if you look, the lines are extremely heavy and almost to the point where you can't use them to scribe. And I would argue that they're incomplete. For example, I do not see on the wing anywhere where the spoilers are. And the spoilers on a B-52 are quite significant because they're a spoiler, but they have probably 40 or 50 fingers sticking up. They're quite unique. Now, they aren't usually deployed on the ground, but that means I would have to etch them in. And of course, I need to do my research to find out if the H model had spoilers. There's only a couple pictures of the wing, and I need to find that out. So all this is an exciting time to build this, and I'm looking forward to adding more videos as I move along. Bye.